The rain hammered against the windows of Moonlight Veterinary Clinic like bullets, each drop echoing through the empty building at 2:47 a.m. Dr. Lydia Chen pressed her palms against her tired eyes, the emergency surgery she'd just completed on the injured German Shepherd, leaving her drained but victorious. The dog, a beautiful creature with unusual amber eyes, had been brought in by a frantic stranger who'd disappeared the moment she'd taken the animal into surgery. "At least you're gonna make it beautiful," she whispered to the sedated dog, gently stroking its thick, dark fur. Something about this animal felt different, special. The way it had looked at her with such intelligence, such understanding. The clinic's landline rang, shattering the peaceful quiet. Lydia frowned. Who called the clinic at this hour? She glanced at the caller ID, blocked number. "Moonlight Veterinary, this is Dr. Chen," she answered, tucking the phone between her shoulder and ear as she continued monitoring the dog's vitals. "Is he alive?" The voice was deep, rough, carrying an edge of barely controlled panic that made her pulse quicken. "I'm sorry, who is this? Are you calling about the wolf? Is he alive?" The desperation in his voice cut through her confusion like a blade. "Sir, I think you have the wrong number. I just performed surgery on a German Shepherd, not a wolf. If you're looking for..." Dark fur, amber eyes, scar above his left eye. The stranger's voice was closer to the phone now, intimate and urgent. "Please, I need to know." Lydia's breath caught. The description was perfect. But how could he know? Who are you? "Someone who cares about him more than you could understand." Is he alive? The raw emotion in those 4 words hit her like a physical force. This wasn't just concern, this was agony, fear, love, all wrapped into something primal that made her heart race for reasons she couldn't explain. "Yes," she whispered. "He's stable, critical but stable. He lost a lot of blood from the gunshot wound, but I managed to..." Gunshot? The word came out like a growl, and Lydia could swear she heard something dangerous beneath it. "Where exactly are you located?" Warning bells chimed in her head. She was alone, exhausted, and now giving information to a complete stranger about a patient. But something in his voice, the genuine anguish, the protective fury, made her want to help him. "I can't give out that information to someone who isn't the owner. If you could come in tomorrow with proof of ownership..." "Dr. Chen," he said her name like he'd known it forever, and the sound sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "I'm coming to get him. Tonight. Don't let anyone else near him." "Wait, how did you..." The line went dead. Lydia stared at the phone, her hands trembling slightly. How had he known her name? She hadn't given it beyond her professional greeting, and the way he'd said it, like it meant something, like she meant something. She looked back at the German Shepherd, or wolf, as the stranger had called him. The animal's breathing was steady now, his powerful chest rising and falling rhythmically. But those amber eyes were open, watching her with an intelligence that made her skin prickle. "Your friend is coming," she murmured, unable to look away from that penetrating stare. "He sounded worried about you." The dog Wolf made a soft sound, almost like he understood every word. Lydia shook her head. She was losing it. 3 years of running this clinic alone, barely sleeping, living on coffee and determination, and now she was imagining conversations with her patients. But as she moved to check his IV, the animal's eyes followed her every movement with an awareness that seemed far too human. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across the parking lot. Lydia's heart hammered as she watched a black pickup truck pull up to the front entrance. The engine cut off, and through the rain-streaked windows, she saw a figure emerge, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a predatory grace that made her mouth go dry. He was at the door before she could fully process what she was seeing, not knocking, not waiting. The door handle turned, and Lydia realized with a start that she'd forgotten to lock it after the last emergency. "Dr. Chen?" The voice was the same as on the phone, but in person it hit her like a physical force. He filled the doorway, water dripping from dark hair, wearing jeans and a black t-shirt that clung to a physique that belonged in magazines, not veterinary clinics at 3 in the morning. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath completely. Amber eyes, the exact same shade as the wolf's. "You came," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "I told you I would." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him, and the space suddenly felt smaller, charged with an electricity that had nothing to do with the lightning outside. "Where is he?" "In the recovery room, but..." She gestured toward the back of the clinic, then caught herself. Wait, I need to see some identification. Proof of ownership. I can't just... He was already moving past her, following an instinct that seemed to guide him directly to the room where the wolf lay. Lydia hurried after him, professional protocol warring with a strange certainty that this man belonged here, that this moment had been inevitable. The man stopped beside the recovery table, and Lydia watched in amazement as the sedated animal's eyes opened immediately, focusing on the stranger with recognition and what looked unmistakably like relief. "Hello, brother," the man whispered, placing a gentle hand on the wolf's head. "I'm here." "Brother?" Lydia's mind reeled, and why did the wolf seem to relax completely under his touch, as if some invisible tension had finally been released? Outside, she heard the rumble of engines, more than one. Her blood turned to ice as she moved to the window and saw 3 black SUVs pulling into the parking lot, their occupants moving with military precision toward her clinic. "We need to go," the stranger said quietly, already lifting the wolf with impossible gentleness. "Now." "What?" "No, he needs monitoring medication. He can't be moved." Dr. Chen, those amber eyes fixed on hers, and she saw something wild and desperate there. "Those men outside aren't here to help. Trust me or don't, but if you want to keep breathing, we leave in the next 30 seconds. As if summoned by his words, the front door exploded inward. If you were Lydia, would you trust a stranger who appeared in the middle of the night to save a wounded animal? Tell me in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what happens next. The front door splintered like matchsticks as 3 men in tactical gear poured through the entrance, their movements coordinated and lethal. Lydia's scream died in her throat as the stranger, still cradling the wounded wolf, moved with inhuman speed, positioning himself between her and the intruders. Dr. Chen, the back exit now. His voice was calm, controlled, but she could see the tension coiling in his shoulders like a spring ready to snap. "Drop the animal and step away from the woman," the lead man commanded, his weapon trained on the stranger's chest. "This doesn't concern her." "Everything about this concerns her now." The stranger's reply was soft, but it carried a threat that made the armed men shift nervously. "You made sure of that when you shot him." "Who are you?" Lydia whispered, her hands shaking as she grabbed her emergency medical kit. Some instinct told her they'd need it. "Someone who should have protected you from this," he said, without taking his eyes off the intruders. "I'm Kieran Blackthorn, and right now I need you to trust me more than you've ever trusted anyone." Kieran, the name fit him, strong, dangerous, with an edge of something wild. "Trust you? I don't even know you." "You saved my brother's life." His amber eyes flicked to hers for just a moment, and in that glance she saw gratitude, desperation, and something else that made her heart skip. "That makes you family, and I protect family." The lead gunman took a step forward. "Last chance, Blackthorn. Hand over the wolf and the woman walks away." "Counter offer," Kieran said, his voice dropping to something that was barely human. "You leave now, and I don't show you exactly why your silver bullets won't be enough." Silver bullets? Lydia's mind reeled. What kind of world had she stumbled into? "Take the shot," the leader commanded. Everything happened at once. Kieran moved faster than should have been possible, somehow shielding both her and the wolf while diving toward the recovery room's emergency exit. Gunfire erupted behind them, the sound deafening in the small clinic. Lydia found herself pressed against Kieran's chest, feeling the impossible steadiness of his heartbeat even as chaos exploded around them. "The door!" he shouted over the noise. Lydia fumbled with the exit lock, her fingers clumsy with terror and adrenaline. The door swung open to reveal the storm-lashed alley behind her clinic. Kieran's truck was somehow already there, engine running. "How did you—" "Questions later. Move!" He lifted her bodily, placing her in the passenger seat before gently settling the wolf in the extended cab. The animal whimpered softly, and Lydia's veterinary instincts kicked in despite the insanity surrounding them. "His IV line is compromised. He needs fluids, antibiotics. He needs to be alive first." Kieran threw the truck into gear as the first gunman appeared in the doorway behind them. "Hold on." The truck launched forward with enough force to press Lydia back into her seat. Behind them, she heard shouting, more gunfire, the screech of tires as the SUVs gave chase. "This is insane," she gasped, turning to check on the wolf. Those amber eyes were open again, watching her with an expression of gratitude that was far too human. None of this makes sense. I know. Kieran took a corner at a speed that should have flipped them, but somehow maintained perfect control. I'm sorry you're in this. I never wanted. He cut himself off, jaw clenching. You shouldn't have had to see this. See what? Who were those men? Why did they want him? She gestured toward the wolf, whose breathing was becoming more labored. And why did they call him a wolf? Because that's what he is. Kieran's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What we both are. Lydia stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for some explanation that made sense. When none came, she laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. Right, werewolves. Of course. And I suppose you're going to tell me that vampires are real too? Vampires are pretentious assholes, but yeah, they exist. He glanced in the rearview mirror, his expression grim. We've got bigger problems right now. The SUVs were gaining ground, their headlights cutting through the rain like predatory eyes. Lydia turned to watch them approach, her heart hammering against her ribs. They're going to catch us. No, Kieran said with quiet certainty. They're not. He yanked the wheel hard right, sending them down a dirt road that Lydia hadn't even seen. The truck bounced and skidded through mud and gravel, but Kieran navigated it like he'd driven this route 1,000 times. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, somewhere they can't follow. The dirt road ended at what looked like a solid wall of forest, trees so dense that their branches formed an impenetrable canopy. But as they approached, Lydia saw that there was a gap barely wide enough for the truck, hidden in the shadows. Kieran drove through without hesitation, and suddenly they were in another world. The path was clearer here, lit by some form of subtle lighting that seemed to emanate from the trees themselves. The forest felt alive around them, watchful but not threatening. What is this place? Home, Kieran said simply, at least one of them. They emerged into a clearing dominated by a massive log structure that was part house, part fortress. Warm light spilled from its windows, and Lydia could see figures moving inside, people who had clearly been waiting for them. Kieran parked near the front entrance, and immediately several people emerged. A woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, a younger man who looked like he could bench press a car, and others who moved with the same predatory grace she'd noticed in Kieran. How is he? The woman asked, her concern evident. Alive, thanks to Dr. Chen, Kieran replied, carefully lifting the wolf. But he needs medical attention. The silver did more damage than I thought. Silver? Lydia's voice cracked. You mean the bullets were actually... Bring him inside, the woman interrupted gently. And Dr. Chen, welcome to Moonhaven Pact territory. I'm Helena Blackthorne, Kieran's mother. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. As they carried the wolf inside, Lydia caught sight of Kieran's face in the warm light. The family resemblance was unmistakable. Helena had the same amber eyes, the same aristocratic features, but it was more than that. There was something wild in both of them, something that spoke to a part of her she'd never acknowledged. Dr. Chen, Helena said as they settled the wolf on a large table that had clearly been prepared for medical procedures. I know this is overwhelming, but right now you're the only one who can help him. Will you? Lydia looked around at the faces surrounding her, all watching her with a mixture of hope and desperation. These people, were they people, clearly loved the injured wolf deeply. And despite the impossibility of everything she'd witnessed, despite the fear still coursing through her veins, she knew there was only one answer she could give. Yes, she whispered, then stronger, yes, but I'll need supplies, equipment, whatever you need, Kieran said, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that stole her breath. I owe you everything. As Lydia began examining her patient, she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this choice was changing her life forever. Outside, she could hear the distant sound of engines retreating, but she knew they'd be back. Whatever she'd stumbled into, there was no going back to her quiet, predictable life. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, as she felt Kieran's presence beside her, steady and protective, she realized it felt like coming home. For the next hour, Lydia worked with an intensity that surprised even her. The makeshift operating room was better equipped than she'd expected. Helena had produced medical supplies with an efficiency that suggested this wasn't their first emergency surgery, but it was the way the pack moved around her, anticipating her needs, creating a sterile field without her having to ask, that truly amazed her. Suction, she murmured, and immediately a young woman with striking green eyes provided it. I need better lighting on the entry wound. Kieran adjusted the overhead lamp without being asked, his movements precise and careful. Every time their hands brushed as he assisted, Lydia felt that strange electric current again, something that made her pulse quicken and her concentration waver dangerously. The silver fragmented, she said, extracting another piece with delicate forceps. It's like it was designed to cause maximum internal damage. It was. Helena's voice was grim. Silver bullets, crafted specifically for our kind. They're not just trying to kill, they want us to suffer. Our kind? Lydia's hands never stopped moving, but her mind reeled. She was performing surgery on a werewolf, assisted by other werewolves, and somehow it felt like the most natural thing in the world. There, she breathed, removing the final fragment. That's the last of it, but he's lost a lot of blood and there's still significant tissue damage. He needs time to heal. He'll heal faster than you expect, Kieran said softly. We all do. As if to prove his point, the wolf's breathing immediately became stronger, more regular. Lydia watched in fascination as the surgical sites began to close at a rate that defied every principle of biology she'd ever learned. This is impossible, she whispered. So are a lot of things you'll see here, Helena said gently. Kieran, perhaps you should show Dr. Chen to a room where she can rest. It's been a long night. I should monitor him, Lydia protested, though exhaustion was beginning to creep into her bones. If there are complications, there won't be, a new voice said from the doorway. But thank you for saving my life. Lydia spun around, her heart stopping. The wolf was gone. In its place stood a man, tall, lean, with the same amber eyes and dark hair as Kieran, but younger, with a mischievous smile that was entirely his own. You were, she stammered. A wolf? Yes, I'm Damon Blackthorne, Kieran's younger brother, and apparently terrible at avoiding silver bullets. He moved toward her with fluid grace, and Lydia could see the bandages beneath his shirt where her careful stitches held torn flesh together. You have incredible hands, Dr. Chen. I've never felt healing like that. But you were unconscious. How did you change back? Pain has a way of forcing the shift, Damon explained, but I was aware of everything. Your touch, your voice, the way you fought to save a creature you didn't even understand. His smile grew warmer. You have a healer's soul. Lydia looked between the two brothers, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was seeing. This is real. You're actually werewolves, Kieran confirmed. Shapeshifters. The last of an ancient bloodline that's been hunted to near extinction by those men who came to my clinic, by an organization that's been tracking us for decades, Helena interjected, moving to stand beside her sons. They call themselves the Silver Dawn. They believe our existence is an affront to nature. But you're not monsters, Lydia said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. I can see it in your eyes, in the way you care for each other. You're just different. Kieran stepped closer to her, and she caught his scent, pine forests and thunderstorms, and something uniquely male that made her head spin. Different enough that most humans would kill us out of fear. I'm not most humans, Lydia replied, meeting his gaze steadily. The moment stretched between them, charged with something that felt inevitable and terrifying and wonderful all at once. No, he said quietly, you're not. A sharp whistle from outside broke the spell. Helena's expression immediately turned serious. Scouts are back. A young man burst through the door, his face flushed with exertion. They're regrouping at the town limits. 3 more vehicles arrived an hour ago, and they're setting up some kind of equipment. What kind of equipment? Kieran demanded. Electronic. Looks like tracking gear. And Helena, the scout's voice, dropped. They have someone with them. Someone who knows our scent patterns. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lydia watched as every face around her hardened into expressions of cold fury. A traitor, Damon growled, his easy manner vanishing. Someone's betrayed us. Or they've captured one of our own, Helena said grimly. Either way, they'll find us by dawn. Kieran turned to Lydia, his amber eyes intense. I need to get you somewhere safe. They'll use you to get to us now. Use me how? You saved Damon's life. That makes you pack whether you understand it or not. And they'll hurt you to hurt us. His jaw clenched. I won't let that happen. But I can help, Lydia protested. I'm a doctor. If there are injuries. You're human, Kieran said, but not unkindly. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment I answered that phone call. She surprised herself with the steel in her voice. Those men destroyed my clinic, threatened my life, and now they're hunting people I care about. People I care about. The words hung in the air, and Lydia realized with a start that they were true. In the space of a few hours, these strangers had become important to her in a way she couldn't explain. Kieran stared at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression: surprise, admiration, and that dangerous heat that made her breath catch. "She's right," Damon said, moving to stand beside Lydia. "She's proven herself already, and we could use a skilled medic." "It's too dangerous," Kieran argued. "Everything's dangerous now," Helena said quietly, "but Dr. Chen has earned the right to choose her own path." She turned to Lydia. "We can try to get you to safety, somewhere the Silver Dawn can't reach you, or you can stay. Help us fight. Become part of something larger than yourself." Helena's amber eyes, so like her son's, held Lydia's gaze. "But understand, if you stay, there's no going back to your old life. Ever." Lydia looked around the room at faces that had become precious to her with impossible speed. She thought of her quiet clinic, her solitary existence, the predictable routine that had defined her life for years. Then she looked at Kieran, at the way he was watching her with barely concealed hope and terror, and she realized there was no real choice at all. "I stay," she said simply. The smile that spread across Kieran's face was like sunrise after the darkest night. Outside, the howl of distant wolves echoed through the forest, but these weren't sounds of joy. They were warning calls filled with pain and desperation. "They found someone," Helena whispered, her face pale. "God help us, they've taken one of ours." The war room in the Blackthorn compound was a study in controlled chaos. Maps covered every surface, marked with red pins that Lydia quickly realized indicated Silver Dawn attacks. Photos of missing pack members lined one wall, their faces young and hopeful in a way that made her chest ache. "Tell me about the Silver Dawn," she said quietly, settling beside Kieran at the massive oak table. It was near dawn now, and exhaustion pulled at her, but sleep felt impossible with so much danger circling them. "They started as a fringe military unit in the 1940s, Helena explained, her fingers tracing patterns on an old leather journal, created during World War II to investigate reports of supernatural soldiers. When the war ended, they went underground, became privately funded." "Funded by whom?" Lydia asked. "Corporations, government black budgets, wealthy individuals who believe in their cause." Kieran replied, his voice bitter. "They've had 80 years to perfect their hunting techniques." Damon, now fully recovered and pacing the room with restless energy, added, "Their current leader is a man named Victor Crane, brilliant, charismatic, and completely without conscience. He sees us as abominations that need to be eliminated." "But you're not," Lydia said instinctively. "You have families, emotions, you protect each other." "Try explaining that to someone who's convinced you're a monster," Helena said sadly. "Crane has built an empire on fear and hatred. He's turned hunting us into a crusade." Kieran's hand found hers on the table, his fingers intertwining with surprising gentleness. The touch sent warmth shooting up her arm, and she found herself studying their joined hands. His so much larger, calloused from work she couldn't imagine, but holding hers like she was made of spun glass. "You don't have to hear this," he said softly. "It's dark, and you've been through enough. I need to understand." She squeezed his fingers, marveling at how right this felt. "If I'm going to help, I need to know what we're facing." The pride in his amber eyes made her heart flutter. "Crane has been escalating his operations," Helena continued. 5 years ago, they were content to track and observe. 3 years ago, they started taking prisoners for experimentation. Now," she gestured to the photos on the wall, "now they're moving toward total extermination." "The pack member they took tonight," Lydia said. "Who was it?" The room fell silent. Damon stopped pacing, his jaw clenched tight. "Maya," he said finally. She was my mate." The pain in his voice hit Lydia like a physical blow. She'd seen enough heartbreak in her years, treating sick animals and comforting their owners. But this was different. This was the kind of anguish that came from having half your soul ripped away. "How long have they had her?" she asked gently. 3 days. Damon's hands were shaking now. 3 days of whatever hell they put our kind through in their laboratories. Kieran stood abruptly, moving to his brother's side. We'll get her back. Will we? Because their last facility, we found 17 bodies, Kieran. 17 of our people tortured to death in the name of science. Damon's voice broke. What if we're too late? What if she's already... She's not. The conviction in Kieran's voice was absolute. Maya is strong and she's survived this long. We find her, we bring her home. Watching the brothers support each other, seeing the fierce loyalty in their eyes, Lydia felt something shift in her chest. These weren't monsters. They were a family under siege, fighting for survival with everything they had. What can I do? She asked. Helena looked surprised. You've already done so much. Not enough. Lydia stood, decision crystallizing. I'm a doctor. If Maya is injured when you find her, she'll need medical care immediately. And if there are others... It's too dangerous, Kieran said immediately. If Crane gets his hands on you, then don't let him. She met his gaze steadily. You said I was Pac now. Let me act like it. Something raw and powerful flashed in Kieran's eyes. Before she could process what was happening, he was standing in front of her, his hands framing her face with achingly gentle reverence. You have no idea what you do to me, he whispered, his forehead resting against hers. From the moment I heard your voice on that phone, something in me just knew. Knew what? She breathed. That you were mine to protect, mine to care for, mine. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and she shivered at the contact. I've never felt anything like this, Lydia. It terrifies me. Why? Because loving someone makes you vulnerable, and in our world, vulnerability gets people killed. Loving someone. The words hung between them, honest and raw and terrifying. Lydia had spent years building walls around her heart, focusing on her work, on helping animals who couldn't hurt her the way humans could. But looking into Kieran's amber eyes, she felt those walls crumbling. Then we just have to make sure no one gets killed, she said simply. He almost smiled at that. It's not that easy. Nothing worth having ever... The moment stretched between them, intimate and charged, until Helena cleared her throat softly. Dawn's breaking. We need to move soon if we're going to track Maya. Kieran stepped back reluctantly, but his hand found Lydia's again. There's something else you need to know about Crane. What? Damon answered, his voice hollow. He doesn't just kill us. He studies us first, takes us apart piece by piece to understand how we work, what makes us different. He met her eyes. He's building something, Lydia. Some kind of weapon designed specifically for our biology. What kind of weapon? We don't know, Helena said grimly, but every facility we've raided, every laboratory we've destroyed, we find evidence of the same project. They call it Silver Dawn, same as their organization. A virus, Kieran added quietly, something that targets shapeshifter genetics specifically. If they perfect it, extinction, Lydia finished, horror dawning, they're planning genocide. And Maya might have been exposed to it, Damon said, his voice breaking again. She might be dying right now, and we don't even know where she is. Outside, a wolf howled, long, mournful, filled with desperate hope. Then another joined in, and another, until the forest rang with their calls. The pack is ready, Helena said, standing. It's time to hunt. As they prepared to leave, Kieran pulled Lydia aside. I need you to promise me something. What? If this goes wrong, if we're caught, you run, you don't look back, you don't try to help, you survive. His eyes were fierce with protectiveness. Promise me. I can't. Promise me, Lydia, because if something happens to you because of me, I won't survive it. Not the way that matters. Looking into his face, seeing the raw fear and love there, she realized that somewhere in the space of one impossible night, she'd fallen completely and irrevocably in love with a werewolf alpha. I promise, she whispered. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. If Kieran was in danger, nothing on earth would make her run. The sound of engines roaring to life filled the morning air, and through the window she could see armed figures moving through the forest with military precision. They weren't the only ones hunting today. The abandoned Silver Dawn facility looked like a medical complex from the outside. Clean white buildings nestled in a valley, surrounded by high fences topped with razor wire. But Lydia could smell the wrongness of it even from their hidden position on the ridge above. That's where they're keeping Maya. Damon said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Through binoculars, she could see vehicles parked outside, guards patrolling the perimeter. Too many guards, Kieran murmured, studying the layout. This feels like a trap. Of course it's a trap, Helena replied grimly. The question is whether Maya is still alive in there. They'd been tracking for hours, following a scent trail that led them deeper into Silver Dawn territory than any of them had ever ventured. The morning sun cast long shadows through the trees, but Lydia felt cold despite the warmth. There, she whispered, pointing to a section of the building where the windows were barred. That looks like a detention area. How can you tell? Kieran asked. The architecture, I did volunteer work at a veterinary research facility in college before I realized what they were really doing to the animals. The memory still made her sick. This has the same design. Clinical on the outside, prison on the inside. Damon was already moving down the ridge. Then that's where we go. Wait, Kieran caught his brother's arm. Something's wrong. Where are all the exterior guards? Why would they leave the front so lightly defended? As if summoned by his words, the main doors of the facility opened. A figure emerged, tall, elegant, wearing an expensive suit that seemed absurdly formal for the location. Even from a distance, Lydia could see the cold intelligence in his pale eyes. Victor Crane, Helena, breathed. The man who had dedicated his life to hunting them stood in the doorway like he was waiting for something, or someone. He knows we're here, Kieran realized. That's when they heard it. A scream that seemed to tear through the morning air like a physical thing. High, anguished, unmistakably female. Maya's voice calling for help in a way that made Lydia's heart shatter. Damon exploded into motion before anyone could stop him, shifting mid-stride from human to wolf, his clothes shredding as muscle and bone reformed with liquid grace. He was magnificent, silver-gray fur gleaming in the sunlight, powerful limbs eating up the distance toward the facility. Damon, no! Kieran shouted, but his brother was already past hearing. More screams echoed from the building, and Lydia watched in horror as Damon launched himself at the fence, clearing it in a single bound despite the razor wire that tore at his fur. It's exactly what Crane wanted, Helena said desperately. He's using Maya as bait. Gunfire erupted from hidden positions around the facility, silver flashes in the morning light, bullets designed to kill their kind. Damon stumbled but kept running, leaving a trail of blood on the white concrete. We have to help him, Lydia said, already moving. We can't. Kieran's voice was anguished. It's suicide. He knows it's suicide, but he can't stop himself. Because she's his mate? Because losing her would destroy everything that makes him who he is. Kieran's amber eyes were bright with unshed tears. I understand exactly how he feels. The implications of that statement hit Lydia like lightning, but before she could process them fully, something changed in the valley below. The gunfire stopped. Damon had reached the building and disappeared inside. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the screaming started again, but this time it wasn't Maya's voice. It was the sound of men dying in ways that defied imagination. He's gonna get himself killed, Helena whispered. That's when Lydia felt it. A strange warmth spreading through her chest, like sunlight melting ice. The sensation was foreign, but somehow familiar, as if she'd been waiting her whole life to experience it. What's happening to me? She gasped, looking down at her hands. They were glowing with a soft golden light that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. Kieran and Helena stared at her in shock. That's impossible, Helena breathed. You're human. The warmth intensified, and suddenly, Lydia could feel things she'd never felt before. Damon's pain, sharp and desperate, somewhere inside that building. Maya's terror, but also her fierce determination to survive. And underneath it all, a connection to Kieran that felt like coming home and falling off a cliff at the same time. What am I? She whispered. A healer, Helena said, wonder creeping into her voice. A true healer. I thought they were all gone. The golden light around Lydia's hands pulsed brighter. I don't understand. Some humans are born with the ability to channel life energy, Kieran explained, his voice tight with amazement and something that might have been fear. They can heal injuries that would kill us, strengthen the pack bond, even... He stopped. Even what? Even bring someone back from the brink of death, Helena finished. But it comes at a cost. Using that much power can kill the healer. Below them, an explosion rocked the facility. Smoke poured from one of the buildings, and she could see figures running, some in Silver Dawn uniforms, others that moved with the fluid grace of shapeshifters. Damon found other prisoners. Kieran realized he's freeing them. But even as he spoke, they could see more Silver Dawn reinforcements. Arriving, black SUVs poured into the valley, disgorging armed soldiers who moved with military precision. "They'll be slaughtered," Lydia said, the golden light around her hands now extending up her arms. She could feel the injured shapeshifters below, could sense their desperation and pain. "I have to help them." "Lydia, no," Kieran grabbed her arm. "You don't understand what you're asking. That kind of healing from this distance with that many injuries, it could kill you. And if I don't try, it will definitely kill them." She looked into his amber eyes and saw her own certainty reflected there. This was why she'd become a veterinarian, why she'd spent her life healing creatures that couldn't speak for themselves. This was her purpose. "I won't lose you," Kieran said fiercely. "Not when I just found you." "You won't lose me," she promised, though she had no idea if it was true. "But I have to try." Before he could stop her, she placed her hands on the ground and reached out with that strange new power, letting it flow through her like a river of liquid gold. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. She could feel every injury, every drop of spilled blood, every moment of terror and pain from the shapeshifters trapped in the facility below. The sensation should have destroyed her mind, but instead it focused her with crystalline clarity. She began to heal. One by one, she felt their wounds closing, their strength returning, their hope rekindling. But with each healing, she felt something vital draining from her own body. "Lydia, stop!" Kieran's voice seemed to come from very far away. "You're killing yourself." She couldn't stop. Below in the facility, she felt Damon find Maya, felt his joy and relief as he held his mate in his arms, but she also felt the Silver Dawn soldiers closing in, felt the trap tightening around all of them. "There are too many," she gasped, the golden light flickering. "I can't heal them fast enough." That's when she felt Kieran's hands cover hers, felt his strength flowing into her like an electric current. The mate bond, she realized dimly. He was sharing his life force with her, amplifying her power beyond what should have been possible. Together, they reached out to every injured shapeshifter in that facility, wrapping them in golden light, giving them the strength to fight, to run, to survive. The effort should have killed them both. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The bond between them flared to life with an intensity that lit up the entire valley. Every shapeshifter within miles felt it, a beacon of hope, a call to arms, a promise that they were no longer alone. When the light finally faded, Lydia collapsed into Kieran's arms, unconscious but alive. And in the facility below, Victor Crane stood among the smoking ruins of his laboratory, watching as dozens of shapeshifters disappeared into the forest like shadows. He smiled, a cold, calculating expression that promised terrible things to come. Did you see that twist coming? What do you think Lydia really is, and can she survive the power awakening inside her? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Lydia woke to the sound of rain against windows and the feeling of strong arms wrapped around her. For a moment, she was disoriented. The bed was too soft, the room unfamiliar, and her body felt like she'd been hit by a truck. "Easy," Kieran's voice was gentle beside her, his hand stroking her hair. "You've been unconscious for 2 days." 2 days. The memories came flooding back, the facility, the healing, the incredible surge of power that had connected her to every injured shapeshifter in the valley. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as the world spun violently. The others she managed. Damon, Maya. Safe. They're all safe because of you. Kieran's amber eyes were filled with an emotion so intense it stole her breath. 37 shapeshifters escaped that facility, Lydia. 37 lives saved because you were willing to risk everything. She looked around the room. It was clearly Kieran's, masculine and comfortable, with personal touches that spoke of a man who valued simple pleasures. Books scattered on the nightstand, a leather jacket thrown over a chair, and everywhere the scent that was uniquely his. "Why am I in your room?" she asked, though the answer made her pulse quicken. "Because for 2 days you wouldn't let go of my hand," he said simply. "Helena tried to move you to the infirmary, but every time someone separated us, your vital signs went haywire." The mate bond, he stopped, jaw clenching. "It's stronger than anything I've ever experienced." Mate bond, the words hung between them, full of implications that both thrilled and terrified her. "Kieran, I need to tell you something," she began, but he shook his head. You don't owe me any explanations. What you did, what you sacrificed. I'm pregnant. The words fell into silence, like stones into still water. Kieran went perfectly still, his hand freezing in her hair, his breathing stopping entirely. But he whispered, I figured it out while I was healing the others. The power surged. It made me aware of everything. She placed a hand on her still flat stomach. It's early, maybe 3 weeks, but there's definitely a life growing inside me. Kieran stared at her for a long moment, his expression cycling through shock, wonder, and something that looked like terror. Is it yours? I don't know how that's possible, but yes. She met his eyes steadily. I haven't been with anyone else in over a year. And somehow that night at the facility, when our bond connected, she trailed off, not sure how to explain something that defied every law of biology she knew. Mate bonds can be intense, Kieran said quietly, especially when they're formed under extreme circumstances. The connection between us, it's not just emotional, it's physical, spiritual, genetic. He reached out tentatively, his hand hovering over hers. May I? She nodded, and he placed his palm over her stomach with reverent care. The moment his skin touched hers, that golden warmth flared again, gentler now, but unmistakably present. I can feel it, he breathed in wonder. The life, the potential, she's gonna be extraordinary. Instinct. His smile was soft, amazed. Alpha fathers can usually sense these things. He looked up at her, and she saw tears gathering in his amber eyes. Lydia! The door burst open, cutting off whatever he'd been about to say. Damon rushed in, his face flushed with excitement and panic. Kieran, we've got problems. Major problems. He stopped short when he saw Lydia awake. Oh, thank God. How are you feeling? Like, I've been run over by a herd of elephants, but alive, she said, accepting his grateful hug. How's Maya? Recovering, slowly. What Crane did to her, his jaw tightened, but she's alive, and that's what matters. The other prisoners are integrating with the pack, and everyone wants to meet the woman who saved their lives. What's the problem? Kieran asked, his protective instincts clearly on high alert. Damon's expression sobered, Crane's escalated. After we hit his facility, he's gone full scorched earth. 3 pack territories were attacked yesterday. 2 were completely wiped out. The warmth drained from Lydia's body. How many? 43 dead, including children. Damon's voice broke slightly, and that's not the worst part. The survivors all reported the same thing. Crane has perfected his virus. What virus? Lydia struggled to sit up despite Kieran's protective hovering. The one we told you about, Silver Dawn, the biological weapon designed to target shapeshifter genetics. But it's not just a virus anymore. Damon ran a hand through his hair. It's airborne and it's spreading. Any shapeshifter exposed to it loses the ability to shift within hours. Then they start dying. A genocide weapon, Kieran said grimly. Worse, because it doesn't just kill current shapeshifters, it rewrites their DNA so that any children they might have would be born human. He's not just trying to kill us, he's trying to erase us from existence entirely. Lydia felt sick. How long do we have? At the current rate of spread, maybe a week before it reaches our territory, maybe less. Damon looked between them, his expression desperate. Helena's called an emergency council meeting. Every remaining pack leader is coming here tonight to decide how we respond. There's something else, Kieran said quietly. Something about Lydia that changes everything. What do you mean? She's pregnant with my child. Damon's eyes widened. But that's impossible. Humans and shapeshifters can't. He stopped studying Lydia with new intensity, unless she's not entirely human. What are you talking about? The healing power, the mate bond, now a pregnancy that shouldn't be biologically possible. Damon's voice grew excited. Lydia, what do you know about your birth parents? Nothing. I was found at a hospital when I was 3 days old. No identification, no family. The familiar ache of abandonment twisted in her chest. Why? Because I think you're descended from the old bloodlines, Helena's voice said from the doorway. She entered carrying an ancient leather tome, her expression grave. The first shapeshifters, the ones who could take any form, heal any wound. That's just legend, Kieran protested. Is it? Then explain how a supposedly human woman just channeled enough life energy to heal 37 shapeshifters from a mile away without dying. Helena set the book on the bed, opening it to a page covered in symbols that seemed to shift in the lamplight. There are bloodlines that went into hiding centuries ago, lines that bred with humans to protect their children from persecution. You're saying I'm part shapeshifter. I'm saying you might be the key to stopping Crane's weapon entirely. Helena's amber eyes, so like her son's, held Lydia's gaze. The old legends speak of healers who could purify any poison, cure any disease, even reverse genetic damage. But using that much power could kill you, Helena finished softly. Yes. The question is whether you're willing to risk everything to save our people. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and through the windows, Lydia could see pack members arriving for the emergency meeting. Families with children, elders with wisdom in their eyes, warriors ready to fight a battle they might not survive. Kieran's hand found hers, his fingers interlacing with desperate strength. You don't have to do this. We'll find another way. What other way? She asked gently. You said it yourself. At the current rate of spread, everyone you love will be dead or transformed within a week. I won't lose you, he said fiercely. Not when we just found each other. Not when we're going to have a daughter. And I won't let our daughter grow up in a world where her father's people have been wiped from existence. She placed her free hand over their joined ones. Besides, I'm not planning to die. I'm planning to save everyone and then spend the next 60 years arguing with you about how to raise a half-shapeshifter child. Despite everything, Kieran almost smiled. She's going to be a handful. With you as her father, definitely. A howl echoed through the forest, long, mournful, filled with loss. Then another joined it, and another, until the night rang with the voices of the grieving. The council's ready, Damon said quietly. They need to hear this. As they prepared to face the assembled pack leaders, Lydia caught sight of herself in Kieran's mirror. She looked different, stronger somehow, with an inner light that hadn't been there before. The change should have frightened her. Instead, she felt ready for whatever was coming. The great hall of the Blackthorn compound had been transformed into a war council. Pack leaders from across the continent sat around a massive circular table, their faces grim in the flickering candlelight. Lydia recognized the tension in the air, the same desperate energy she'd felt in emergency veterinary situations when time was running out. The Riverside Pack is gone, announced Marcus Wolfhart, an elderly alpha whose silver hair spoke of decades leading his people. 43 souls, including 7 children, all dead within 6 hours of exposure. The Mountain Peak Pack lost their ability to shift entirely. Added another leader, a fierce-looking woman with scars across her left cheek. They're still alive, but she shrugged helplessly. What are we without our wolves? Kieran stood at the head of the table, every inch the alpha as he addressed the assembled leaders. We have a potential solution, but it comes with significant risk. More risk than watching our people die, Marcus demanded. Speak, Blackthorn. All eyes turned to Lydia as she rose from her chair. She could feel their skepticism. She was human, an outsider, someone who'd been part of their world for less than a week. But she could also sense something else, desperate hope. I believe I can neutralize Crane's weapon, she said simply, but I'll need to get close to the source. Impossible, the scarred woman Alpha Sarah Ironclaw scoffed. Crane's main laboratory is a fortress. Even if we could get you inside, the security isn't designed to stop someone like me, Lydia interrupted. They're prepared for shapeshifters, not healers from the old bloodlines. A murmur rippled around the table. Several alphas leaned forward with new interest. You're claiming to be descended from the first ones? Marcus asked, his ancient eyes studying her intently. I'm claiming to be whatever I need to be to save your people, Lydia replied. The how and why matter less than the what. And what exactly are you proposing? Sarah demanded. Helena spread a map across the table, satellite images of a massive complex nestled in the Colorado mountains, Crane's primary research facility. This is where he's manufacturing the virus, where he's coordinating the attacks. It's a death trap, Damon said, quietly. He'd been unusually subdued since the council began, still haunted by what he'd seen in Crane's other facility. The place is crawling with Silver Dawn operatives, automated defense systems, and God knows what other countermeasures. Which is why we're not going in as shapeshifters, Kieran said. We're going in as humans. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Lydia would pose as a captured healer, a prize that Crane wouldn't be able to resist studying. Kieran and a small team would infiltrate as Silver Dawn operatives using uniforms and identification they'd stolen from previous encounters. Once inside, Lydia gets to the laboratory while we create a distraction, Kieran explained. She neutralizes the virus at its source, we extract, and hopefully buy enough time for the remaining packs to regroup. Hopefully, Sarah repeated sarcastically. That's your strategy, hope. Hope and love, Lydia said quietly, placing a hand over her stomach. Sometimes that's all we have. The gesture wasn't lost on the assembled alphas. Several shifted in their seats, recognizing the protective instinct of an expectant mother. There's something else, Helena interjected. If Lydia is truly from the old bloodlines, her pregnancy changes everything. A child born from the union of an alpha and a first one healer. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Such a child could bridge the gap between our world and the human world entirely. Which is exactly why Crane can never know about it, Kieran said firmly. If he realizes what Lydia is carrying, he'll stop at nothing to possess or destroy it, Marcus finished grimly. The risk is enormous. The risk of doing nothing is greater, Lydia argued. Every hour we waste, more of your people die. I won't sit here debating while children suffer. Her passion seemed to galvanize the room. One by one, the alphas began nodding their agreement. When do we move? Sarah asked. Dawn, Kieran replied. Crane's expecting us to regroup to mourn our dead. He won't expect an immediate counterattack. As the council broke up into smaller planning groups, Kieran pulled Lydia aside. They walked out onto the compound's main balcony, where the night air carried the scent of pine and rain. I need you to know something, he said, his hands framing her face with infinite tenderness. If this goes wrong, if we're captured or killed, I want you to know that these past few days have been the best of my life. Don't, she whispered, covering his hands with hers. Don't talk like this is goodbye, isn't it? We're walking into the heart of enemy territory with a plan that has maybe a 10% chance of success. Then we make it an 11% chance, she said fiercely, and then a 12% chance, and keep going until we beat the odds entirely. He kissed her then, soft and desperate and full of promises neither of them was sure they could keep. When they broke apart, Lydia could taste salt on her lips and realized one of them was crying. I love you, he whispered against her forehead. I've loved you since I heard your voice on that phone, worried about a stranger's injured wolf. I love you too, she replied, the words feeling like coming home, which is why we're both going to survive this. Our daughter deserves to know her father. A commotion from inside the compound interrupted them. Damon burst through the doorway, his face pale with panic. They've taken Maya, he gasped. Crane's people, they got her. They left this. He handed Kieran a photograph. It showed Maya chained to a laboratory table, unconscious, with medical equipment surrounding her. On the back, in elegant handwriting, the healer for the mate, Dawn, come alone. It's a trap, Lydia said immediately. Of course it's a trap, Kieran replied grimly, but it changes nothing. We stick to the plan. No, Damon shook his head violently. I go alone. I get Maya, you handle the virus. We split up. Absolutely not. We go together or not at all. Kieran! Lydia's voice cut through their argument with quiet authority. He's right, Crane's trying to force us into an emotional response to make us act rashly, but maybe that's exactly what we should do. Both brothers stared at her. Think about it, she continued. Crane's expecting us to come in force, trying to rescue Maya and stop the virus simultaneously. What if we give him what he wants? An emotional, desperate alpha trying to save his brother's mate while the real operation happens elsewhere. You want to use Damon as a decoy, Kieran realized. I want to use all of us as decoys, she corrected. Crane's weakness is his arrogance. He thinks he understands how shapeshifters think, how we'll react. Let's prove him wrong. Thunder rumbled overhead and the first drops of rain began to fall. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, not in grief this time, but in challenge. The final battle was coming, and they would meet it on their terms. The Colorado facility loomed against the dawn sky like a monument to scientific cruelty. From her position in the stolen Silver Dawn transport vehicle, Lydia could see the massive complex sprawling across the valley, laboratories, detention centers, and what looked like a small army's worth of defensive positions. Last chance to change your mind, Kieran murmured beside her, his silver dawn uniform making him look like a stranger, but his amber eyes were the same, filled with love and terror in equal measure. Never, she replied, checking the dampening collar around her neck one final time. The device would suppress her healing abilities until removed, making her appear to be just another captured human. Is everyone in position? Through their earpieces, confirmations came from around the facility. Damon and his team were approaching from the east, playing their part as the desperate rescue operation Crane expected. Helena led a group of pack warriors from the south, ready to create chaos when the signal came. Other allied packs had surrounded the perimeter, cutting off escape routes. Remember, Helena's voice crackled through the comm. We wait for Lydia's signal. No matter what happens to any of us, the virus has to be stopped first. The transport rolled through the facility's main gates with practiced ease. Kieran had studied captured Silver Dawn operatives for weeks, perfecting their mannerisms and protocols. To the guards, they looked like just another team bringing in a high-value prisoner. Dr. Victor Crane is expecting this one personally, Kieran told the intake officer, his voice carrying the perfect blend of professionalism and barely concealed disgust that Silver Dawn operatives showed toward their captives. The officer checked his clipboard, then looked at Lydia with interest. Even with the suppression collar, something about her seemed to radiate power, a fact that hadn't escaped their notice. The famous healer, he said with a cold smile, Dr. Crane has been very eager to meet you. They were escorted through sterile corridors lined with holding cells. Lydia tried not to look too closely at the faces pressed against the reinforced glass shapeshifters in human form, their eyes hollow with despair, but she could feel them, even through the dampening field, could sense their hope flickering to life as she passed. Soon, she whispered, too low for their escorts to hear. The laboratory where they brought her was a nightmare of chrome and glass, dominated by a massive containment unit that hummed with electrical energy. Inside the unit, she could see vials of a silvery liquid, hundreds of them, enough to poison every shapeshifter in North America. Magnificent, isn't it? Victor Crane's voice was smooth, cultured as he emerged from behind a bank of monitors. In person, he was smaller than she'd expected, but his pale eyes held an intelligence that was genuinely frightening. 20 years of research reduced to its purest essence. You're a monster, Lydia said simply. I'm a visionary. He circled her slowly, studying her like a particularly interesting specimen. Do you know what your kind represents to humanity? Contamination, genetic pollution, an evolutionary dead end that should have been eliminated millennia ago. We heal, we protect, we love. You're predators wearing human faces. His voice hardened. But you're something special, aren't you? The readings from your previous performance were quite extraordinary. Crane gestured, and one of his technicians removed the suppression collar. Immediately, Lydia felt her power surge back to life, golden warmth flooding through her system. There, Crane smiled. Much better. Now, shall we see what you're really capable of? That's when the alarm started blaring. Sir, a technician called from his station. Multiple breaches on the eastern perimeter. Shapeshifters moving fast. Crane's expression didn't change, but Lydia saw satisfaction flicker in his pale eyes. Right on schedule. Activate the containment protocols. Release the emergency dispersal. Horror washed over Lydia as she realized what he meant. The virus wasn't just in storage, it was weaponized, ready to be released into the facility's ventilation system. Every shapeshifter in the building would be infected within minutes. You planned this, she breathed. Of course I planned this. Did you really think I didn't know about your little rescue mission? Crane moved to a control panel, his fingers dancing over the keys. Every shapeshifter pack in North America just walked into my trap. In 5 minutes, they'll all be dead or transformed, and you, my dear, are going to watch it happen. Through the facility's windows, she could see explosions blooming in the distance, Damon's team fighting desperately against overwhelming odds, Helena's warriors pinned down by automated defense systems, all of them about to be killed by the very virus they'd come to stop. Unless Crane continued conversationally, you'd like to prevent it? What do you want? Your complete cooperation. Submit to my experiments. Let me unlock the secrets of your bloodline. And I'll delay the release long enough for your friends to escape. Lydia closed her eyes, feeling the lives flickering around the facility like candle flames in a hurricane. Damon wounded but still fighting. Maya chained in a cell 3 floors below, weak but alive. Helena coordinating the retreat even as Silver Dawn forces closed in. And Kieran somewhere in the facility's lower levels, desperately trying to reach her. She opened her eyes and smiled. Counterproposal, she said quietly. Before Crane could react, she placed her hands on the floor and released every ounce of power she possessed. The golden light that erupted from her was blinding, flooding the laboratory and racing through the facility's walls like living fire. But this wasn't healing energy, this was its opposite, a cleansing force that sought out corruption and burned it away. The virus containers began to crack, their contents hissing away into harmless vapor. Every sample, every backup, every trace of Crane's weapon was consumed by Lydia's power, purified into nothing. But the effort was killing her. She could feel her life force draining away with each passing second, her vision dimming as her body struggled to channel more power than any healer was meant to contain. "Stop!" Crane screamed, lunging toward the emergency controls. "You're destroying years of work." That's when Kieran burst through the laboratory doors, no longer pretending to be anything other than what he was, a furious alpha protecting his mate. He moved with inhuman speed, crossing the room in a heartbeat, his hand closing around Crane's throat with enough force to lift the man off his feet. "You should have stayed away from her," Kieran growled, his voice barely human. But even as he spoke, he could see Lydia collapsing, the golden light flickering around her like a dying star. "Kieran," she gasped, "the mate bond. Use it." He understood instantly. Dropping Crane, he knelt beside Lydia and placed his hands over hers, opening the connection between them completely. His strength flowed into her, his life force joining with hers, giving her the power to finish what she'd started. Together, they reached out to every shapeshifter in the facility, wrapping them in protective light, cleansing their bodies of any trace of the virus, healing wounds that should have been fatal. The building shook around them as their combined power peaked, and through it all, Crane's screams of rage echoed off the walls. When the light finally faded, Victor Crane found himself alone in a ruined laboratory, surrounded by the smoking remains of his life's work, while alarm klaxons wailed the news that every single one of his prisoners had escaped. In the distance, he could hear the sound of wolves howling in victory. 3 months later, Lydia stood on the porch of their new home, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The house was a compromise between human comfort and pack needs, large enough for extended family gatherings, surrounded by forest, with enough medical equipment to serve as a regional healing center. Her hand rested on the gentle curve of her belly, where their daughter grew stronger each day. The pregnancy had progressed rapidly once they'd returned to pack territory, as if the baby was eager to join the world her parents were building. "You're thinking too hard again." Kieran's voice was warm with affection as he joined her on the porch, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I'm thinking about how much has changed," she replied, leaning back against his solid warmth. 6 months ago, I was a lonely veterinarian who thought the most exciting thing in my life would be a difficult surgery. Now you're the Luna of the largest shapeshifter alliance in North America, carrying the child who might bridge 2 worlds. And according to the Council of Alphas, the most powerful healer born in 3 centuries, he finished with a chuckle. "I can see how that might be overwhelming." Through the trees, they could hear the sounds of the evening pack gathering, children laughing as they played, adults sharing stories around a fire, the comfortable noise of a community that had found peace after years of war. "How's Maya doing?" Lydia asked. "Better every day. Damon's been insufferable. You'd think he invented mating bonds the way he carries on." Kieran's amusement was evident in his voice. "She starts her healer training with you next week." The discovery that Maya had dormant healing abilities had been one of many surprises in the aftermath of Crane's defeat. It seemed that the old bloodlines were more widespread than anyone had realized, their gifts awakening as the shapeshifter community began to heal from generations of persecution. And Helena's integration program, ahead of schedule, 23 packs have agreed to the new alliance structure, and we've had inquiries from shapeshifter communities on 4 continents. Kieran turned her in his arms, his amber eyes soft with pride. Your idea of creating healing centers as neutral ground between human and shapeshifter territories is revolutionary. It's necessary, Lydia corrected. We can't keep living in shadows and fear. Our daughter deserves a world where she can be both human and shapeshifter without having to choose. As if responding to her mother's voice, the baby kicked enthusiastically. Kieran's hand joined Lydia's on her belly, and their shared wonder at the life they'd created never failed to take her breath away. What about Crane? She asked quietly. Kieran's expression darkened slightly, still in Silver Dawn custody, as far as we know. The organization fractured after the facility's destruction. Some factions want to negotiate, others have gone even deeper underground. But without the virus, they're just another hate group with too much funding. Do you think we'll see him again? Probably. Men like Crane don't give up easily. He cupped her face gently. But when that day comes, we'll face it together, all of us. A comfortable silence settled between them as they watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The pack bonds that connected them to their extended family hummed with contentment. Dozens of lives intertwined through love and loyalty, stronger than any weapon their enemies could devise. Lydia, Kieran said softly, his voice carrying a note she recognized as nervousness. What is it? Instead of answering, he knelt on the porch, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Even in the dim light, she could see the ancient silver band inside, etched with symbols that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. This belonged to my grandmother, and her grandmother before that, he said, his voice rough with emotion. It's been passed down through the Blackthorn line for 12 generations, waiting for the woman who would complete our alpha's heart. Tears blurred Lydia's vision as she realized what was happening. I know we're already mated, Kieran continued, but I want the world to know that you chose this. Chose us, chose to build a future where our daughter can run as both human and wolf. He looked up at her with eyes that held all the love in the world. Will you marry me, Lydia Chen? Will you be my wife, my Luna, my partner in all things? Yes, she whispered, then louder with joy radiating through every word. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. The ring fit perfectly, sliding onto her finger like it had been made for her. The moment it settled into place, she felt a pulse of ancient magic. Not her healing power, but something deeper, older, a blessing passed down through generations of strong women who had loved strong men. Kieran stood and kissed her then, soft and deep and full of promises for all the tomorrows they would share. Around them, the pack bonds flared with shared happiness as their joy spread through the community like wildfire. When they broke apart, Lydia could hear celebration erupting throughout the territory, howls of approval, cheers from the human members of their alliance, the sound of a people who had found hope again. I love you, she murmured against his lips. I love you too, he replied. Both of you. Their daughter kicked again, as if adding her approval to the moment. As they stood together on their porch, surrounded by the sounds of their pack's celebration, Lydia thought about the phone call that had started it all, a wrong number that had turned out to be the most right thing in her life. She'd saved a wounded wolf and found her soulmate. She discovered powers she never knew she possessed and helped forge a new world where love could triumph over hatred. And this was just the beginning. In the distance, a wolf howled, long triumphant, filled with the promise of new life and endless possibilities. Their daughter would grow up in a world where such songs were celebrations, not warnings. That made everything they'd fought for worthwhile. What would you risk for a love that could change everything? If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe, because love stories like this remind us that the most beautiful endings are really just the beginning. What do you think happens next for Lydia and Kieran's daughter?